So thank you for joining us today, this morning where I am, this afternoon in India, and I know it's this evening in some parts of the world as well. So my name is Belgin, Okay-Somerville, and I'm an associate professor at University of Glasgow. And it's a pleasure to welcome everyone on behalf of the Academy of Management Careers Division Regional Ambassadors team, and my colleague Surendra Taluri from IIM Lucknow, and I have the pleasure of organizing this session. Surendra, would you like to introduce yourself briefly as well?
Sure, Belgin. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, everyone, all the speakers, to agree for our invitation to talk about careers research in this webinar. So my name is Surendra Taluri, and I'm a PhD candidate in HRM area at IIM Lucknow. So my focus of research and careers are mostly how people build successful and sustainable careers. So I'm looking forward to hearing all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Surendra. Last year we started the Careers Around the World webinar series as part of the Academy of Management Careers Division. And these included successful webinars on careers in Africa, careers in Asia, careers in the Middle East. Today's webinar is the first webinar of 2023, and it focuses specifically careers in India context. And today in the room we have 4 esteemed speakers. Each of whom will take about 12 minutes to present their research, followed by roughly 3 minutes or so of questions and answers. And we're scheduled for 90 minutes. And so that leaves us about half an hour towards the end of the session to discuss developing careers in the Indian context, but also doing careers research in Indian context as well. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Nimmi Mohandas, is an assistant professor at Amrita School of Business. And she's earned her PhD in career and organizational psychology from Cochin University of Science and Technology in Kerala, if I'm pronouncing correctly. So Dr. Nimmi's primary research areas include employability, career attitudes, and future of work. She has around 20 publications in various Scopus journals and presented research papers at international and national conferences as well. Dr. Nimmi has collaborated with scholars from the UK, USA, Italy, China, and is very fluent in cross-national studies. Dr. Nimmi is engaged in many faculty development programs and is very interested in understanding and developing novel research methodologies. As well as all of this, her teaching research includes HR consulting, HR analytics, and she's keen to update on many developments and applications of HR analytics in human resource management. So Dr. Nimmi, I think you should be able to share your screen with your slides on, and I will put myself on mute, and looking forward to hearing your presentation.
So hope all of you can see my slides, right? Yeah, fine. Thank you. So thank you, Belgin. Thank you, Surendra, for giving me this wonderful opportunity, because right from 2015, I've been working on careers, graduate employability. So employability is my major area of research. So I've been working on graduate employability, that is initial part of your career, right? So I've been working on this aspect for the last 5 to 6 years. And I'll just walk you through the different papers, different research outputs that I had produced through these times regarding graduate employability and careers early stage. So I'm as Belgin had introduced myself, Dr. Nimmi. I'm from Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, Coimbatore. So, these are the 4 major career stages that any employee might go through. That is initial exploration stage, establishment, mid-career, then late career. So I mainly cater to the first part of these stages, that is exploration stage, basically school to work transition. So if you see the different works, different papers, research papers and discussions that is coming up in many of the research paper from India, we can see that we have many papers in exploration as well as establishment phase. Okay, there are really a depth of studies in mid-career and what is happening in late career, especially from an India perspective. There are not many studies, especially in this mid-career, what is happening like career plateau, career sabotage, all these aspects. This has prominent, very important importance in today's world. So these aspects need to be really gone through, and we should have more and more research into this mid-career, what is happening for employees at their mid-career, and how they are giving off, weaning off from their work and going to the other part of their life. So these aspects need to be addressed first. Next, journey through my works. As I told you, employability is my major area of research. And if you know, like employability, the ability to work, right? The ability to do a given work. And this aspect, this construct has been studied from a graduate concept or a graduate perspective, from an employee's perspective, disabled people's employability, the employability of elderly women. So the last three portions, that is disabled, elderly, women. These specific topics has been less discussed in India career research perspective. So this is a great area for the, I'm talking this for the benefit of future career scholars. Okay, if you want to do really good impactful research, so this is the area that you have to really look into the employability of these three people. Okay, these three sectors of society. Now, if you see employability, there are three what you call perspectives from which employability has been discussed so far in research. That is from a psychological perspective, from a career like dispositions or trait perspective. Then there is a competence-based perspective, which has been talked by none other than Beatrice van der Heijden. So these three aspects of employability is there. And if you see the research on employability, we can see that 80% of the work is like from perceived employability point of view. Okay, how people pursue their employment. There is psychological evaluation of their employability. So this is an overstudied, I should say overstudied area, but still this is a strong, what you call, resource that any scholar can hinge upon, like to develop their study. But I really call upon for more studies on dispositional employability, what are the dispositional factors or trait level factors that can influence the other sustainable workplace kind of things, and the competences, different competence, soft skills and hard skills, these keep on changing. Okay, what are the new competences that I have been looking on at workplace as well as employability is concerned? So these are the three aspects, and my major works are like I'm coming back to perceived employability only. I'm trying to venture into these other two aspects of employability. Now, this is different perspective: micro level assessment of employability, meso level, as well as macro. Micro in the sense personal perspective, how an individual develop his employability, what are the factors, psychological, physical, or what the demographic or the situations that will help an individual, maybe a graduate or an employee, that might help that individual to develop employability. The next one is, and my major contribution goes to that micro perspective alone, but I am having a few works in meso as well as macro aspects of employability. Meso in the sense institutional employability, we can call it as institutional employability or organizational employability. Okay, like for an organization, how will it assess the employability? Okay, is it the sum product of the employability of all its employees? But if you understand an institutional employability or a business school's employability, what is that? Okay, is it the sum product of the graduates' employability over there? So that understanding need to be worked. No, we need to have more and more works on meso aspect of employability. The next one, of course, macro, which is a national level at a wide perspective on employability. What are the different factors that come into play from a national, regional, or if you take the case of India, statewide? Okay, what are the different initiative that has to be taken to enhance the employability of, I won't say youth, of all ages. Okay, people of all ages. So these are the three aspects. So three perspectives on employability. Rather, I started my journey with this wonderful concept called protean careers and how that impact their employability as well as sustainability, like in the sense well-being, how it impacts the psychological capital of that individual. So my work has been, I had gotten invited opinion piece to be written in LSE review, and this has gone online on June 2nd. You can read it from here. How adapting a protean attitude towards work will help you to enhance your employability or your well-being at workplace. So kindly look into it when you have free time. Next, from the different papers that I have worked on graduate employability. In this particular paper, which is on lifelong learning and its impact on employability, I have made this study and I have done this study among engineering students, engineering students, and I have seen the importance, how do they perceive, how important is lifelong learning for their employability. So at the initial stage of their career itself, how do they perceive lifelong in learning is important or not? So this is one work among these graduate people. And among management graduates, I had asked them how important is psychological resources, in the sense here you have William Donald, a good friend of like Belgin as well as mine, and he had helped me thoroughly in developing this study. So here we have discussed the importance of psychological capital. Okay, this is a major, we have to talk, we cannot escape the psychological resources when we talk about sustainability or when we talk about sustainable careers. So how important is this particular aspect and perceived employability for management graduates? That's been discussed in this particular paper. Then this is a wonderful other work by Donald and myself. And this is about serious leisure. Okay, if you see the case of, like, when I talk with William, he used to say that how important leisure is for people in Europe and how they take it seriously, right? But when we see my citizens, like citizens in India, we are all always like work, that kind of attitude. But this is changing. This kind of attitude or orientation is kind of changing. But still, we need to give more and more importance to the leisure part of our life. Okay, we need to invest more on the leisure part of our life. So we were trying to see, when we invest more on these leisure activities, that itself serious leisure, not casual leisure, how that impacts your self-perceived employability and how that impacts your well-being. Okay, we got a strong connections, and this has been done among graduates, like graduates in India and recent pass outs. Okay, and we have got a strong connection, and we could see that even at higher level of stress, this association seems to be very strong. So this has major practical implication as far as India is concerned. Next, the importance of developing spirituality. And we know that as we move through our career, we are ought to face so many hurdles in our career. So we need to prepare our students right from early career stages, because we apply for jobs, we will get so many rejection. How to deal with that? We need to get those resources right from the beginning itself. So we propose that bringing up spirituality among the students. Okay, developing spirituality among students could be really useful. Okay, and we were trying to see whether this orientation could enhance the well-being and even employability. I could say even employability, because that confidence or that positive emotions can be seen that merging into heightened employability or well-being among management graduates. So this is one another study that I have done among graduates. And from a meso perspective, okay, till now I have been talking from a micro perspective, that is personal level, how each factors affect their employability. From a meso perspective, that is from an organizational or institutional perspective, how an organization or institution can help their students. So here we can see in this particular study, this is my first Scopus publication, where we could see that heightened employability, the graduates had a heightened employability by the end of their career, it will positively impact their job search behavior. Okay, we have active job search as well as passive job search, and the heightened employability positively impacts their job search. And this job search learning goal orientation do have an interference, that is mediation effect in this proposition. And we also looked into the importance of experience, that is work-based learning and all, internship, how all these things help. And there is a positive what you call inference on job search active behavior. Okay, so how all these things are important for a fresh graduate, those things, and how what all an organization or an institute can do in this particular aspect has been seen in this particular paper. Next 3 papers on a meso perspective of employability I have been still working on, and these 3 papers are in review, like the importance of academic engagement on employability. So I have seen so many work, because this concept academic engagement is not new, but still I did see a particular huge research gap looking into the importance of, or how academic engagement might impact the employability of the graduate. That has been put into a longitudinal research, and we could see positive result. And Dr. Beatrice is a part of this particular work, and this is under review. Another thing is impact of protean attitude on career sustainability. And the third, this is a quasi-experimental kind of study which I've been undertaking, the importance of microaffirmations. So you would be very familiar with microaffirmations as well as microaggression. So we are looking into how microaffirmation mentoring strategy can enhance students' psychological resources. So it's a very interesting study. We had a control group and an experimental group, and we tried to see how if we are providing this mentoring and we are approaching that with a microaffirmation style, whether it impacts the psychological resources. So this is in writing. Yeah, this is in writing. And these 3 papers we have developed from a meso perspective. Then from a macro perspective, okay, what is happening from a national perspective, on national level initiatives, or from like India is a huge country, as Belgin said, India is a huge country. We have different 28 states, like, and the skilling program in each state is different from one another. Okay, what Kerala is undertaking is different from what UP is undertaking. So here in this particular project, this is also with William and Dr. Paul Matthew, and we have talked about, okay, this additional skills acquisition program. This is called ASAP project in Kerala. It's a skilling project for all the graduates in Kerala. And how do they do this? Okay, how do they initialize this? How are they running this particular project? Okay, it is like more like a case study. Okay, this can be replicated if you read through. No, it is very interesting, the mechanism by which they implement this huge project. No, it can be replicated in different parts of the world. And this is one fine initiative from our side. Next is, I really want to introduce, if nobody has really known about this till now, no, you have to subscribe to this handbook of research on careers, sustainable careers by William. Like I had 2 chapters over here. Please don't mind my work, but you will get the pleasure of reading like 20 to 24 chapters in this particular book, all about careers, all about sustainable, even from a sustainability perspective, from a graduate perspective, you will have n number of studies in this particular book. So kindly, I recommend this book. Okay, kindly read this particular book if you are a career scholar anywhere in this world. Okay, we have they had authors from all parts of the world, like India, Europe, Africa, Australia, like that. Okay, in this particular work we had 2 papers. Okay, career ecosystems and sustainable career. Look, I said that the initiatives or the things happening in the nations differ. So myself and Dr. Gerardo Petruzilio, he's from University of Bologna, Italy, and we try to compare, okay, how this employability of graduates differ. Okay, that because of the different initiatives and different phases that these nations go through. Okay, from a macro perspective, how these things change. Okay, that is being covered in career ecosystems and sustainable careers, a cross-national study. In another study from the same book, this is another chapter. This is by William, and he's the first author. We have Maria Jakovic in this particular paper, where we have tried to assess how, like, there have been different career shocks that is individuals might be undergoing, right? These career shocks, how people had overcome these career shocks. Okay, we had actually William had interviewed people in UK, maybe fresh graduates in UK, who had undergone this career shock. That is the 2 shocks, the pandemic as well as the 2008 recession. Okay, how people had overcome this career shocks. And this is also a wonderful piece of paper. And this is another work of mine, which is very close to my heart. It's about the future of work. And this is a very trending topic right now. And this paper has come in like higher education skills and work-based learning. And here we all try to understand like the perception of graduates, okay, graduates, on what the future of work will be. Okay, what do they expect to see in the future, especially from a work perspective, maybe workplace or the characteristics of a work. How do they want to change the changes? Okay, what are the changes they want to see? Okay, all these things has been captured in this particular paper. So for all the career scholars in India, I would recommend this report, that is India Skills Report, that has been running from 2017 till 2023 itself. It has come out, and we can see very promising results, right? The thing is, it has been fluctuating, but still when compared to 2017, there has been a rise. And actually, I'm trying to write a paper on this thing. Okay, what are from a labor perspective? Okay, from a labor economic perspective, what happened? Okay, what are the things that went positive and how this result came up? So these are the things that I would like to share with all the new career scholars out there in India and outside the world. And thank you. Namaste. Belgin, over to you.
Namaste, Nimmi. Thank you so much. That was very, very comprehensive, covering vast amounts of research across, as you say, micro, meso, and macro levels as well. I don't see any questions in the chat. If there's questions in the audience, perhaps you could maybe use the raise hand function, and we could take questions that way. I suppose while we're waiting, I could chip in, if that's okay, Nimmi. One of the questions I had in mind, if I may, is clearly you do vast amounts of research on psychological resources, and it's clear that psychological resources are very, very important. And your research is increasingly, I see, moving towards understanding how institutions can help and how policy could help at macro level as well. So what are your insights as to how we can help the institutions at the meso and macro levels?
Like from meso, like if I look into my works, I mostly work with business school, okay, where I teach. So I am trying to because the employability of management graduates, it's also important, right? When we see the academic engagement that is happening over in the different strata of business school, because we do have different strata of business school, okay, that differs. Okay, that what you call, if you could if you could share these facilities that is available in different strata, to the like lower grade B schools, that would be very helpful. Because in most B schools, because I have been working out my career from not like from the top, I am going from the down to the top. So I could see that they lack the resources, how to engage these students and all. They lack the understanding, but still these graduates are also important when we see the demographic definite and how they work to know. So these factors are like very important. So if this information sharing keeps on happening, right? When I see how things are being worked at Amrita, this is huge, and the understanding and the what you called the importance that is given to the minute details, it's all very interesting. So if this information sharing happened between the organization, well and good, ma'am.
That's very interesting. So the institutions clearly do matter, don't they?
Yes.
Which type of, as you say, business school or which type of university that students are coming out of, and how to level the differences between these institutions, and whether or not the institutions actually have motivation to help each other, because then,
when it comes to accreditation and rather than going for a cut-short competition, let's work together. Yes, that aspect has to be given importance.
That is a major challenge, if I may say so. I see there's a comment from Namita in the chat. Very informative, Dr. Nimmi. Thank you. Lots of concepts covered in short time. Very clear. Best wishes. So thank you for that positive comment, Namita.
Thank you.
I think it might be time to move on to our next speaker. So thank you very much, Dr. Nimmi, for all your insights.
Thank you.
Our next speaker today is Dr. Vivek Nair. Dr. Vivek is an assistant professor at IIT Delhi, that's Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. Dr. Vivek has a PhD in organizational behavior from IIM Calcutta. His research has been published in international journals, reputable international journals such as Journal of Business Ethics, Career Development International, and Decision. Dr. Vivek's broader research interests include subjective career success, entrepreneurial careers, meritocracy, flexible work arrangement, and management education. And prior to his PhD, Vivek has worked in various capacities across domains such as IT information technology, automotive, and test prep industry. And Vivek holds a BTech degree from NIT Calcutta and a PGDM and MBA from IIM Bangalore. Vivek, you should be able to share your screen if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yes, I'll just move to it.
So I will let you to introduce your topic today, and I'll put myself on mute. Thank you.
So yeah, I hope you can see the screen. All right, thanks. So thank you so much, Belgin, Surendra, for this opportunity. Thank you for all of you for coming here and giving me some time to present some of the work that I'm doing with Navya, a doctoral scholar working with me. And this is I'm going to focus on just one idea today. In fact, this is sort of early stage in some senses. So I'm hoping to get inputs to sort of shape this as we take it forward. Right. So the title of our presentation today is Crafting a Sustainable Career, Managing Careers with a Chronic Illness. So let me just dive right into the topic. Okay. So chronic illnesses or chronic diseases, there is a slight difference between the two terms. Chronic diseases are typically conditions that last more than a year and require ongoing medical attention. It's obviously sort of a fairly big issue in the sense that approximately 41 million people die of chronic diseases. And there's a slight difference between disease and illness in the sense that disease is the biological condition and illness is how people perceive the condition, the disease. And we've sort of seen there is some literature on this on chronic illnesses and its impact and how it impacts the workspace or how it impacts or leads to lower careers, early retirement, reduced productivity, more or less broadly negative sort of outcomes, and or some other kind of transitions. And so this is the sort of space that we sort of are looking at. The Global Burden of Disease report, which the United Nations often uses, sort of talks about the various risks. It can be a metabolic risk or an environmental/occupational risk or a behavioral risk, which can lead to one of these, which can lead to chronic illnesses. And it's also, while, I mean, I'll sort of try to situate it within India, but it's also a globally sort of relevant topic in the sense that it's one of the Sustainable Development Goals, which sort of broadly comes under the ambit of good health and well-being. And of course, adjusting or promotion or prevention of illnesses is considered a major sort of topic. And obviously, so any sustainable development goal typically requires a multi-stakeholder sort of an approach, which involves government, organizations, individuals. The solutions have to be contextually sort of planned and so on and so forth. Right. So chronic illnesses is a fairly globally relevant topic, but also in the Indian context. Let me just sort of try and situate that. Of course, India is one of the world's largest economies, and now we are perhaps the most populous country. A lot of people, I think, are still involved in what we call the informal economy, and there is some amount of unemployment, which then means that a whole bunch of social security coverage, medical insurance, and some of these kind of things is available or not available to a large section of the population. India is one of the largest, I think, freelance gig work workers, and all this sort of implies that the social security coverage has implications for social security kind of coverage, which makes it sort of an important topic to think about in the Indian context. Of course, there's a lot of diversity, and social cultural norms across the country are fairly diverse. 60% of all deaths in India are due to chronic illnesses. India is often sometimes referred to as the diabetes capital. Every sixth person with diabetes is an Indian. And of course, health is sort of on the state list and the central list, I think so. So there are state-wise variations, as Nimmi was saying. We have several states, and each of these states are at different levels in terms of their evolution and the extent to which they can their systems and processes. And yeah, of course. So essentially, I've already covered this point that social security coverage could be an issue. Now, the theoretical lens that we're hoping to, or the concept that we're hoping to we think applies well to this space is the career shocks sort of space. Again, there's a fair bit of literature now on career shocks, which is growing every day, on how career shocks often lead to progression, proactive behavior, efficacy, resilience, optimism, thriving, transitions, and so on and so forth. Typically, maybe my limited reading, but our reading suggests that career shocks are either positive or negative, and this valence sort of subsequently leads to some outcomes. Of course, Akuman says this paper, which sort of talks about several issues with regard to career shocks, and we do believe that being diagnosed with a chronic illness can get regarded as a career shock, and then subsequently how people and this is because it's a chronic condition. There is this continuous sort of adaptation, if you will, or a continuous need to demonstrate resilience, adaptation, and so on and so forth, right? And that's what we plan to study. So, of course, Ackermans talks about several attributes such as valence, duration, control, source, frequency, etc. And we feel that some chronic illness fits some of these attributes and provides this fertile ground for study. Of course, again, we hope to contribute to the career sustainability literature. DeVos and others have talked about 3 indicators. I think there are different ways in which people have conceptualized career sustainability. In 2015, the paper initially talked about agency, meaning, time, and space, social spaces. And today, we talk about person, context, and time, or health, happiness, and productivity in terms of the outcomes in some senses. The outcomes would be health, happiness, and productivity. And of course, we've often talked about burnout and some of these things, which are perhaps mental health. I think physical health has not seen as much focus, and we feel that's something we need to consider given the scale of the issue. Of course, career sustainability, we are looking at sort of a cyclical pattern of how people respond to some of these chronic illnesses of career shock. There are again several theoretical lenses that we could use when we look at if you look at the career shocks itself, literature so far, and some of the suggestions from scholars, happenstance, chaos theory, career construction theory, SCCT have all been used. Event systems theory has been used. Conservation of resources theory, of course, is it's often used on some of these kind of events. And but we are, of course, to some extent, we are focusing on career conservation of resources to some extent, and also looking at how event system theory also. But we feel that there's this entire theoretical landscape from where we could, which we could tap on. And I'm eager to hear your responses in terms of where you think some of this fits. So we've just started data collection at this stage in some senses, and some of the three let me just sort of talk about some of the core issues that have so far come out One is this idea of a chronic illness being an invisible, so this is the DEI space, diversity, inclusion sort of space, where people, because this is sort of an invisible or less visible sort of a identity, if I may use the word, disclosure issues, impression management issues become critical in terms of when do I tell my boss, when do I tell my colleagues that I have this. I mean, typically, and particularly in the COVID, they often had to decide whether to tell people or not in case they were scared about, contracting the disease in the office and so on and so forth. We found that this was a issue that people dealt with in different ways, either only to the boss or only to colleagues or testing waters and so on and so forth. And I think that's an interesting area in terms of how people handle invisible sort of career shocks, if you may. The second is, of course, the context. And I think this is finally, when you look at it as a medical condition, then you can see technological advancements and medical advancements and social security coverage. We have now several states and several central policies which provide coverage. And as this keeps increasing, and this is the context in which they are dealing with this particular illness, we feel that's another space. And in terms of how these advancements help aid or inhibit the way they deal with this illness. The third is, of course, the progression of the illness, and from a career's point of view, how various dimensions of subjective career success, for instance, whether work-life balance becomes more important or less important, whether financial security, financial advancement, some of these dimensions, do they become more important or less important as you go through some of these, as you experience or in your adjustment or adaptation to the chronic illness. So these are some of the three things that have so far come out as themes that people have talked about. And I think I'll close at this point. Essentially, any thoughts, any suggestions on which theory might be appropriate, what could be the sample? I mean, we're of course thinking of another quantitative study as well. I think I'll stop it here and sort of would open it up for discussions. Let me just keep this here and then I'll close. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vivek. That was fascinating insights. And it kind of hits on how Nimmi started her slides as well, highlighting some of the understudied populations in relation to career development. So that link, seeing that link there is quite nice. I know we've got esteemed colleagues in the room, and there is a lot to discuss about your research. So I'd like to invite colleagues if they have comments, questions. Clearly, Dr. Vivek is looking for feedback as well. So please do feel free to feed in. Oh, see something in the chat. Deepa, did you want to come in? Sorry.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Vivek. I'm Deepa here. So, yeah, I mean, I have a little, I don't know if it's a very generic question, but when I was hearing this career shocks, I want to know whether you're talking about the physical career, the physical ailments and all that, or it is more of a psychological career shocks. Are you covering both the areas? When I say
clearly that's not,
no, it's
sorry.
more of, when I say psychological career shocks, it's more about like when you lose your job or when you're in a toxic environment, you're not sure how to go about things like that.
No, so we are hoping to understand that what is the physical illness, say like diabetes, somebody getting diagnosed with diabetes would imply some financial labor burden, might, if there is some illness which is caused by stress, for instance, then this would impact the way people will decide how much travel they have to do, maybe at the workplace, and so on and so forth. So we're looking at the sort of spillover, if you will, of that chronic illness onto the workspace and how they manage their career subsequently. This is the broader sort of question that we're looking at. We are starting from a position of a physical sort of illness, and then looking at its ramifications onto the workplace or onto their professional work identity and so on. So I hope that clarifies.
Okay, thank you.
And I suppose it helps to clarify career shocks, and Dr. Vivek, you know more than I do, but are defined as any external shock that impacts how you think about your careers, isn't it? How you perceive your careers or how you reflect on your career. So it could be the physical or psychological, or it could be the an earthquake as well that could impact your career. So any external shock, basically.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks.
And Nimmi says study is the need of time, Vivek. So that's great encouragement.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Oh, sorry, Surendra.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, thank you so much, Dr. Vivek, for sharing your work. So I have few comments, even just like to discuss when I hear the presentation. So when you talk about the indicators of sustainable career, that is, they are like health, happiness, and productivity. And the career shocks that you're talking about, maybe you're operationalizing with the physical illness as chronic illness, right? So you're whether you are exploring the interaction between the indicators of sustainable career, like for example, if someone is suffering with chronic illness, that comes under health, and how it impacts the other two indicators of sustainable career, like happiness, that means their subjective career success, and their performance and employability. And that's one thing, and or whether you're separately operationalizing it as a career shock. That's one thing I would like to have a clarification from you. And the second thing, probably from the theoretical point of view, whatever the theory that you are discussed, probably I just have, it's a very broad or general suggestion. Probably if it is it sounds rational, then you can take it. So probably JDR theory can be one of the options that you can look at, because when you talk about illness, it can be a workplace demand which will impact their workplace productivity or engagement, and even it can impact the psychological well-being of the work person. And probably resources also that can come from different aspects of the person, that can come from their family or his own personality, or context from organization or the outside team, and all that stuff. So probably these demands and resources, how they impact the person's sustainable career indicators, maybe you can look at that one theoretical perspective. These are the two things that I have to share with you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Surendra. That's really helpful. Yes, currently ours is a qualitative design. We are taking interviews, and in that sense, we are looking at health, happiness, productivity, all of them together, and we're sort of looking at the implication of one on the other. As I sort of talked about, apart from that, the person context sort of time also helps. I think is also useful sort of a dimension, in the sense that over time, they talk about how earlier this was important, but today this is more important. They do talk from a temporal sort of perspective. Participants have talked about that. Obviously, so we're looking at the health, I mean, I don't know if spillover is the right word, but you know, the impact of the health condition on the workspace, or their work identity, or the work the job demand roles. We have been thinking a bit about it, whether conservation of resources, which I think is a more broader, which takes into account maybe some of the other things, is more appropriate, or JDR, right? So yeah, I mean, thanks for that. We are also, I think, thinking on the same lines in some senses, and I think Nimmi, you can.
Yes, like Vivek, there is one theory called salutogenic theory. I don't know whether you had included in that PPT. Kindly go through it. I think it might help you. Like, it also talks about illness and how it affects the resources. So kindly go through this salutogenic theory.
Thank you so much. I have noted it down. I will. I don't know if we've not really looked at it in so much detail so far, but I will definitely go through it.
That's Vivek, clearly your area of interest in this research is very multi-dimensional and draws in from different disciplines. This is a great example, I suppose, isn't it? How careers research actually draws in from different, there's implications for inequalities, you know, social inequalities, economic inequalities, as Surendra was saying, geriatrics, etc. So there's a lot that you could really pull in from. We will look forward to reading about this research. I think it's time if we move on to our next speaker. Thank you very much, Vivek, for this wonderful contribution to our webinar series. Our next speaker is Professor Sushanta Kumar Mishra. Professor Sushanta is a professor at Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. His work has been published in top journals in his field. Professor Sushanta is an associate editor at Personnel Review and IIB Management Review. His co-authored papers have been adjudged as Best Paper Awards at the Academy of Management annual meeting and nominated for the Carolyn Dexter Award at the Academy of Management meeting as well. One of his co-authored works was selected as first runner-up in the International Journal of Human Resource Management for the Michael Pooley Best Paper Award in 2020. Professor Sushanta is currently the president of the Indian Academy of Management. So Professor Sushanta, I see you're managed to share your screen, so that's one of my questions out of the way, and we'll put myself on mute and let you introduce your topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Belgin, for all your hard work. Also, thanks, Surinder, for inviting me. And also thanks my co-panelists for their insightful thoughts, which are worth investigation. And my dear audience. Today, I'm going to share something about the family aspect of careers. And I'll take two studies just to share my thoughts on these two topics. So I'll share my motivation of the study and then try to take you through these studies. And I assure you I'll stop in 12 minutes. So when you talk about change, we say it's not just an individual phenomenon, it's a family phenomenon. The spouses, they pass through a lot of experiences and they also do a lot of things to facilitate this career change. And I want to explore something around this, share something around this through this first study. My motivation is this lady in the middle is my daughter. Now she is a medical student. And the lady on the right-hand side is my wife. And when I joined my PhD program, so it was an entirely different one. And I had a 1-year baby. That girl is now grown up. And I had to go through that transition. I was an engineer working in a PSU, and I have to make that transition. And I have experienced that change and the support of this family in making it happen. And I have my doctoral student, her name is Akhila, and she is changing her career from an IT professional to an academia, to an academics. And she is a cute baby. And also she is passing through the same experiences. And these experiences prompted us, is it makes sense to look at the career from only the change perspective of the individual? Or does it make sense to look at it from the spouse point of view? And that's our study one. And when you talk about career change, we are talking about dramatic change in the area of work. For example, a dentist wants to be a lawyer, or an employee wants to be an entrepreneur. So you need to have newer skill sets, you have to change your routines, and also the work environment will be entirely different. So we are talking about the context of voluntary change, but it is radical in nature. Means you have to invest your time and energy to pick up newer skill sets. Existing literature, they predominantly focus on the individuals who change their careers. There are few studies who have explored the family aspect of career changes, but some of the studies are focused on involuntary career changes, not the voluntary aspect, and we want to fill this gap. So the study tries to focus on the career change as a family phenomenon and the roles and experiences of spouses. And predominantly, we are trying to focus on the career changer as a male, and the spouse is the lady who is going through that entire change. So the criteria we followed is at least one spouse should be going through or having completed a voluntary radical career change. And out of that, we interviewed 30 respondents, and there are 14 of them are in that process of transition. They have not yet completed that. and 16 of them have already completed the transition, and we interviewed them after they have completed their transition. Total interviews were 30 to 40 minutes, and in some cases, we reach out to the respondents twice. And these are the spouses that we are sharing. Also, we went ahead and interviewed the changers to validate some of our points. So ideally, we have interviewed more than 60 respondents. What are the challenges we identified? We went through this entire grounded theory approach. We took the interviews, analyzed it line by line, followed the Joya method to line by line analysis, first order, second order, and themes. And I'm just sharing the broad findings. What we find is the challenges are when they make this career change, there is common challenge. You are coming from a comfort zone to a new area. So there is some challenges. You don't know people. So it takes time to adjust to that context. And also as a spouse, you don't want that your better half is not overloaded, because when he is making the career shift, there is invariably a lot of pressure on this guy. So the spouse, they come back and say, well, can I protect this person? So they take more load to ensure that the person who is making the career change is relieved. So these are the challenges they face. When they shift, they move from a joint family to a very nuclear family, a new setting, new context you don't know. So it is relatively unknown place. So that social support they used to get gets compromised. And also when people move, you also have financial constraints, and the steady earnings gets compromised because you are investing that time to acquire newer skill sets. So that's the challenge they face. That's at the family level. At the individual level, this spouse, they went through this emotional turbulence because of this change, right? Comfort zone to the stretch zone. Hindered social interactions. They lose out on their friend circles there, the neighbors there, and they move to a new place where they will not be knowing many of them. They feel alone, and also they don't have anyone to listen to them, talk to them, because the husband is busy in doing his or her studies. Also, they ensure that the pressure on the husband is less, so they portray as if they are very positive, they are well settled in the new context. They take that additional mental burden to ensure my husband is well off. These are the challenges they go through. But what invariably they protect when they do is they provide unconditional encouragement to their husbands. There's some cases they said we went out, find out some job opportunities, so there's some income so that we have a better life. Also, they ensure that the relatives, they are not, they don't, they are with this entire decision. So they love you with them, convince them so that they are not anti against this boy. So that, because when you are making this transition, you have to give your full time, you may not have the time to attend those social occasions. So the spouse takes charge and ensures that everything is smooth, and unflinching moral support. They understand that this person is going through a lot of challenges, so they provide a lot of moral support. And also they find that what gives them that energy to help, to support, anticipation of a better future. Whereas this is a temporary phase. Once this is done, we'll make this transition. And also they bring the positivity. They pass through that difficulty, but they bring that positivity so that the entire family ambience is positive, right? So that they try to cope. When the husband looks, else encounters a difficult time, the spouse comes up and talks about the positive sides, and that's how they provide the support so that the husband takes up that challenge, and that facilitates the career change. That's the broad finding we got. So here we are talking about a context predominantly where a male, he is making the career change and the spouse is trying to support him. That's one study. The second study, what we try to do is the lady, she wants to be an entrepreneur, all right? And what are the challenges she faces? Now she is going through that change, and how she takes up that challenge and how do she navigate that entire journey, all right? Now the literature of entrepreneurship, they talk about family resources impacts the business. And when you talk about the family resources, they talk about financial resources, the family gives the resources, instrumental relationship. They have other businesses, so it helps them to sell their products or get the inputs in a better way, or moral and emotional supports. and also indirect support, right? They help in some of the activities. These are the predominant support system coming from the family that impacts the business. And the research says if the family support is high, resources are high, it enables the business, right? New venture. And if it is low, it is obvious, right? It constrains the business. Also, they found if the family resource is high, but the business is not growing, means maybe it is not enabling. In fact, it is suppressing. And some cases, though the family support is low, the girls, they come out and try to go ahead with that business, right? So they're beating the odds. These are the evidences there in the literature. What the literature forgot to address is how the women entrepreneurs harness family resources, right? Well, the resources are available, but how do they navigate so that they get those resources? Probably is little unaddressed. And through this study, I just tried to highlight some aspects of that. So we interviewed 23 entrepreneurs, and out of that, we selected 17 because some of them we found are not actively involved in that venture. And the duration of the interviews around 90 to 120 minutes. And in a couple of early interactions, we took more than 2 interviews so that we understand the nuances. And the respondents are from different parts of this country. So that we get, at the end of the day, our criteria is they are into the entrepreneurship journey and they are doing it on their own. They are taking the lead. This is one part of the study. What we find is they want the approval from the family in their business decision, right? And family as a support for the business, right? The support not only confines to the financial support, they want all types of support. And also sometimes the family situation triggers them to look at the family. Maybe there is family constraints or they have a temporary break from the job. So they want to do something. And also they want the family members to join them in their business, right? So that they don't have any challenges about the human capital or getting the resources from the market. Now, when we're trying to look at this, we found one interesting aspect that is coming across the respondents consistently. We talk about these resources that help them to grow their business, but what we found is they are not so much interested in the financial resources or instrumental resources or indirect resources. They are actually trying to find out the moral or emotional resources, and they are actually look for those resources. What we found is through different codes, even with passion, skills, and capabilities, and also they think I can do a great job, they seem to crave for approval and acknowledgement that they are doing the right thing from their family members, right? They want that moral support, they want that emotional backing from their family members. And also they say, well, going to the market, meeting the tough situations, bringing capital, suppliers, these things we will do. But we want the insiders inside my home, my family, I want their approval. They use different ways to communicate this message. And they want their families to be with them, to back them morally. Not to say that you are not going to succeed, have faith on us. That's what they want, right? And they want them that, no, we're not doing anything wrong, right? And if this support we get, probably we'll cross all these boundaries. That's the one of the predominant thoughts, themes that we discovered from these interactions. Now I stop here. I just try to summarize the 2 studies that I narrated with you. In the first one, this lady, a family member, spouse, she is trying to protect or protecting the spouse from all other uncertainties because they understand, hey, this person is going through a tough time. Let me support. Let me provide them the support. In this second case, the lady is saying, no, I don't want you to compromise. I don't want to compromise in my family. I will take care of my family. I don't want you to involve in that. I will do everything possible to ensure that my family is well taken care of. But what I need from you is moral support, emotional support. In both the cases, I will do everything. I just need that human touch, the belief in me that yes, I can do. Now, in Indian context, we talk about Lord Durga. I am coming from the eastern part of Odisha, eastern part of India, where you pray Lord Durga. He has 10 hands, and she protects us from all difficulties. And also she passed through a lot of stigma, a lot of difficulties in that entire process. And what we find is, and my thought is, hey, this Durga in different avatars are there with us. Maybe it's time for us to acknowledge that we can't make these career transitions without the help of this family member, and that's our spouse. I just stop with my last slide. The directions for future research. One question that is we are trying to explore now is what happens? Yes, I compromise my prime time for my husband. What happens after some 10 years, 15 years? How do these girls feel about their career? The second question I want to is, when the wife makes these career transitions, do they get similar support from their husbands? I don't have any answers, but we are exploring. Thank you very much for your patience hearing.
Thank you very much, Sushanta. That's, again, fascinating research. I will ask the audience for questions. I see Professor Biswas applauding and Sushanta applauding. Professor Biswas, did you want to come in?
Yeah. Sushant is very nice study. No, it is all from a male's perspective. No, your last question is very important. How many male spouses have supported females' career growth? I mean, you are saying that you are exploring. I don't know if a study has been done, but that will be very interesting, because how many male will support a female spouse to do well, even going beyond what they are doing currently? That will be a fantastic study. I don't know whether you have launched this study or you are planning to do this study, but it will be interesting to see.
Thank you for some inputs, but actually it's difficult to get the respondents in Indian context. I agree completely. I have shared one book chapter which just published in April 2023, where I have taken one example to say how this lady is helping the family.
Yeah.
So in case you have some time, you can read this chapter.
Yeah, sure. And second part, of course, that entrepreneurship thing, which you have mentioned, that is really true. That kind of thing has happened in many parts of the country. And it's nice. And I'm very happy to go through the entire report. Thank you, Sushant.
Thank you, sir.
Nimmi?
Yes, yes, sir. So actually, is this a thesis or is it an article, sir? We are very much looking forward for this thing to come out, because I'm currently working.
These are two different theses. And the third thesis is also about career identity, where we're trying to find out what happens to a lady when she is doing a dirty work. All right. So these two are the theses, and I just share with you a part of those thesis work.
Okay.
Yes.
Like actually, I'm doing a work on how this happiness triad differs between homemakers and home runners. So I shall get so many inputs from this particular work. I'm waiting for your work, sir.
Thank you.
Vivek, I think your hand was up, is that right?
Yeah. So if I may, sir, thank you so much. Very interesting work. I was just particularly on the entrepreneurship, the women entrepreneurship part, because most of the entrepreneurs, most startup ventures often fail. That's sort of, at what stage are we doing this? And did success, or I don't know whether it's preliminary success or continued, did success or failure of the venture itself have any impact on the findings?
Possible, but what we found is from the interviews, sorry, I might be taking some more time, that they say, hey, I don't need finance because this finance that you are providing is actually constraining me. Number two, you don't believe in my competence. You think because you are giving me a lead, hence I am doing this business. I don't need that favor. I just want you to believe in me that yes, I can do business. Provide me that emotional support. That's all they are saying consistently after these interviews. Somehow we bring those biases that hey, the ladies cannot do. As family members, and the persons who are there referring to are their husband, their father-in-law, their fathers. They somehow try to protect that girl, don't give them that freedom to go forward and do their business. They don't believe in them, and that's what they're asking for.
Thank you, sir.
And Surendra, and we'll move on to Professor Uday Bhaskar after Surendra's question.
So First of all, hello, so thank you so much for the interesting studies. Both of them were really interesting, and the first one I can personally relate because I also share the similar career stage, because when I joined my PhD, I also worked for PSU for 8 years, and I also have a baby who is 2 years old when I joined PhD. So I can completely relate study one with my personal life. And even I had a conversation with Akila also during the study. So first of all, it's very interesting. I have one question. So probably the same findings, if we replicate in a Western context, what do you think? The findings will be same or different? Because in India, we believe the spouses, generally they tend to support male spouses, and their careers occupy primary importance rather than their own careers. But maybe it's not true in the Western context as far as my limited understanding. So what do you think on this? Thank you so much.
My hunch is, though we talk about collectivist and individualistic values, but my hunch is the findings will be similar. We find the same because literature in Western context, they say the girls, the women, they compromise their careers. They shift along with their husband when they want to move, right? Maybe it's a good idea to check with the generational things. Maybe the new generation, Gen Z, maybe there will be some change in patterns. I'm not sure. I'm just guessing. But the husband-wife relationship, I think it's still very powerful, irrespective of the Eastern or Western context. It's my belief. I'm not tested. So, yeah.
That's wonderful insights. And just based on picking up very quickly, if I may, before we move on to Professor Bhaskar, Sushanta, I think when you say they craved for approval, I took notes there and then put beside it role congruity theory, because we know that if, as a woman, you behave in what's perceived as more male ways, as in become an entrepreneur in this case, then you will be criticized for it. So, and that's going to become a major barrier for it. So hence, as you say, maybe if we replicate the study in a Western context, we might still find similar effects. And I think that's a very fascinating empirical question to tackle going forward. So thank you very much, Professor Sushanta, for all your contributions. And I hope the audience is seeing where we're going with this, because there's so many different dimensions to all these individual careers. So last but not least, we've got Professor Uday Bhaskar from IMT Ghaziabad, with close to 2 decades of teaching and research experience in India's top business schools. Professor Uday is published in leading journals such as the Financial Times top 50 journals like Human Relations and Journal of Knowledge Management, Personnel Review, International Journal of Manpower, and so on. Professor Uday has a rich consulting experience in the human resources domain with leading public and private sector firms as well. His preferred pedagogy is the case method of learning, and he was trained in the Harvard Business School for case teaching and writing. He's a reviewer for many leading journals such as IJHRM, Personnel Review, International Journal of Manpower, Human Relations, and is on the editorial advisory boards of many journals as well. Professor Uday's research interests are in the area of contemporary careers, disability in careers, talent management, managing organizational performance. He presents his research in the Academy of Management in the conference in the USA, and he conducts faculty development programs at different business schools in India as well. And prior to all of this, Professor Uday has obtained his PhD from IIT Delhi as well. So Professor Uday, I will put myself on mute just now and let you introduce your research.
Thank you, Belgin. Thank you, Surendra, for this opportunity. And I thank my previous speakers for such an interesting presentation, because it made my job a little less easy, because it's difficult to hold on to audience. So thank you so much. And I've come to this careers research not by design, but by accident. And my good friend, Dr. Sushanta, has spoken just now about the kind of impact and the kind of influence that spouses have on the other spouse. So it was just by, that my my better half, she actually started one research with Yehuda Baruch. And that paper that we have in the personal review, that was the first piece of research that I did in the careers domain, and which was on career orientations of business school graduates and how MBA is actually a factor, acted as a moderator in their employability. So that was the first paper, and actually that's how I got interested into the careers area. So subsequently, I was actually, when I was trying to scan through the literature of what the top journals are looking at, where there's a positive research and where there is an opportunity to contribute to careers theory and career literature. Then when I looked at Mukta Kulkarni and Kumar and Balridge and all the stuff, Stone and Kalila's work, disability inclusion, disability identity, I was deeply attracted and seduced by the area because there is so much of possibility which the area can throw. So when I was scanning the literature and all that, there's enough work which was actually done by in different areas. What actually attracted was whether there is enough work done on specific occupations or in the career space, and what is the thing which is actually lacking if there is some work which is already being done in persons with disabilities. So normally when literature spoke about the work and all that, it was mostly the work where they've spoken about the barriers, the stereotypes, the kind of challenges that the people with disabilities face, and therefore they're not able to have any kind of employment or any successful life and so on and so forth. So, but then all that work was primarily from the lens which was what is the barriers, the stereotypes, the challenges. So there was no work as such as far as careers of this disadvantaged population was concerned. So this is where we thought that it's good to look at. So then there was already work which was published by Mukta and her team, and which looked at PDWs in general. And there is also a paper in Human Relations where they spoke about the hearing impaired. So then I found that this is one area where the visually impaired as a specific disability or a serious disability was not something which has received adequate attention from career scholars. So this is where we did some more research. And in fact, how do you reach to this kind of population? Because sometimes, they might be very apologetic of the fact that, they don't have eyesight, and they're not very welcoming or forthcoming to talk about their own experiences. So this was a difficult transition that, when we set out this kind of study and all that, and how do you reach to this kind of population and make them speak? Because, they sometimes are very shy. But actually, I was very pleasantly surprised that when I reached out to this kind of population, they were some of the most interesting and fascinating people. And some of them still stand to me as role models because the kind of barriers, the kind of stereotypes, the kind of challenges that they faced, and the way that they have navigated their careers to achieve successful and sustainable careers was actually very astonishing. So this is where, after having a discussions with some of the organizations in India which work like Enable India, NAB, Internationalisation of the Blind in Delhi, or BRA, the Blind Relief Association in Delhi, and all the Blind School and all that. So we took out the details of the people, possible respondents, and reached out to them through a snowball. We reached out to the larger audience. So that is how this entire thing was, convinced. And subsequently, then we collected data, this actually is a qualitative study that I'm going to present, which I did with Yehuda Baruch and Sita Gupta. And this is the study. And then whole question of why study careers of visually impaired individuals. India happens to be the global capital for the blind. Having said that, there are no enough facilities. The government has been trying on its own, trying to have special educators for them and get them at least in some part with other PDWs, but it was just not happening. So therefore, in terms of education, in terms of training, in terms of employment, they're faring the poorest. And because of the kind of prevailing belief, the kind of attitudes, other people, the ableist individuals will have towards the disabled India is still a major problem. And therefore, the families which are supposed to own and support these kids, the blind people, they are the ones who are actually discarded, and they are being. So therefore, and specifically, one of the reasons why when we study visual impairment as a disability and what it means to their career progress and career growth, it has to be treated slightly differently, because the severity is huge. When we say visual impairment, it's just not visual impairment, but it's also mobility impairment. So there was a very old human relations paper or a piece of research which said visual impaired individuals are they just can't see, but they also tend to miss the kind of social cues that we have in conversations. Therefore, they are not able to build on conversation capital or have a dialogue, and therefore form a kind of psychological contract, which is so essential for them to be successful either in life or at work. So these are some of the motivations for which actually drove us to, and this is the work which was already done. Balaj and Kulkarni, Gopakumar, they have already done this work. And for example, they're linking, because when we talk about PWDs, we are talking of incompetence, we are talking of dependency, we are helplessness and lower product. These are all the kind of, they're unfounded. In fact, research has found that, when you hire someone, a PWD, they tend to be more committed and they tend to perform better, and they are not going to switch jobs. That, in fact, that's one of the career lens that we theoretical lens that we wanted to use. And thanks to one of the reviewers, a very, very strong and a very powerful reviewer, because we all know it's a blind review, we don't know who the reviewer is, but we wanted to contribute to the boundaryless career theory also. But some of the data and the findings and the analysis, it was not supportive of the boundaryless career. And in fact, the final conclusion was people who have disabilities, their careers are not actually boundaryless, they are bounded. They have bounded careers. Bounded careers are fixed employment contracts, and when they forge a unique psychological contract with their employers, works best for them. Right? And because of the prevailing kind of, which actually comes from the family, from the social milieu that we operate, we take it back to the workplace, and any kind of person with a disability, and especially a visually impaired individual who comes in, the first thing is keep that person at bay. So these are the kinds of, and therefore, which actually talks about the low employment. When there is no employment as such, we can't talk about careers, right? Then we started with this basic research question: how do visually impaired individuals ever overcome the stereotypes, the stigma, and the discrimination, and how they go ahead to build a successful and a sustainable career? This was the defining grand tour research question that we had in mind. And this is something that we discussed with other career scholars like Sherry Sullivan. Yehuda, of course, came on board. He was actually a friendly reviewer. He got so much interested in the work. He said, look, great work. I'll be able to contribute, I think. So if you take me on board, I'll be happy. So that's how we are very happy to have you on board. So that is how Yehuda came onto the paper. So then we went ahead with this research question, and then we had an interview protocol, and we used this. In fact, the funny story is, we have used the career ecosystems as one of the lens, but Yehuda was so much against. He said, look, this is my theory. I might have so much of bias for it. Then I kept on batting, and finally I succeeded in convincing him, because he was more for the boundaryless career theory, is not so much for the career ecosystems. And because one of the reviewers was so much against, and the paper got rejected, though it was not an FDA-registered paper, but there's a big top career journal. So we had to drop boundaryless career, and we brought on career ecosystems theory. And we did so in the context of inclusive careers, because today we are talking about so many diversity, inclusion, and all that. If you do not use this kind of population, which have unique talent, who can contribute so uniquely to productivity, to innovation, and all this kinds of stuff, organizations are actually losing big time. So therefore, we had to study this population and what it actually means for inclusive careers, not just career ecosystems and career sustainability. And we used adopted a qualitative approach, and we used the grounded theory principle, and we have used the Joy et al.'s the methodology for data analysis, so that because it was most suited for us, and we wanted to use this. The reason why we used this method was because we wanted to understand what career success and what career sustainability means from the actor's experience, not rather than seeing as an outsider and make an assessment or judgment of what it actually means, and rather plot on a scale and measure. Because we thought this is more an experience, and because people with these kinds of career expenses, because this is a very kind of disadvantaged, unique population, they might have a very different way. So when we talk about objective career success or a subjective career success, the definitions for ableist individuals is very different when you compare them with non or PWDs. So therefore, we applied this method. And as I said in the beginning, that we reached out to the NAB, the BRA, and the Enable and other NGOs, and we used a purpose sampling strategy, and we got around 60. There is a small story here when we talk about 66. In fact, we thought it's a great idea to reach out to people who have achieved great career success. And the first submission, the first version of the manuscript which was submitted to the journal was only the stories of very highly successful individuals. The reviewers came charging at us, said, how the hell you can have such a frame, sampling frame, because it's faulty, because unless you are going to talk about to all, at least a cross-section of people who are less successful, you're just labeling as highly successful from the beginning. So there is always already a prejudice which is there. So therefore, we had to go out back to the field again, add more individuals who are not that highly successful or did not have that career attainment, and which actually took us to 66 individuals, and we interviewed them. But when we actually looked at the data analysis, we looked at the transcripts. The way they narrated their career stories was startlingly different. They were startlingly different. Because the people who have, because to give you an example of the group which we have labeled as high career attainment group, they were successful professors, they were lawyers, they were musicians, they're stage artists, they were software engineers, they're all these kinds of people. I mean, even if you apply an objective or a subjective measure of career success, they're right up there. They will compare with any able individual. But when you talk about the low career attainment people, they were the ones which were languishing, because part of the factors which was actually responsible was the social economic status. These individuals belonged to, and the awareness of the family. Interestingly, it was not the education of the parents which was important. It was not the education of the parents which was important, because if a family has a visually impaired child, what kind of information they are seeking from the external environment is important, how they process that information, how they bring up the child. In fact, most of the high career attainment participants from a sample who have been very highly successful, they did not go to a special school or schools which are meant for the blind. They went for the schools which are for normal schools. They competed with the sighted, they fought with the sighted, and they competed for jobs with the sighted, and hence they have been successful. Therefore, the concept of relatability, which is one of the major key findings of this study, is how well you relate to a sighted individual at work or at school. And therefore, you have to develop those kinds of psychosocial processes wherein you force that kind of acceptance, which is the first level where they get to see you as a colleague and start working with you as a team member. Right? So this is what. So then we segregated these two samples. And again, when we presented that, as I shared the link to the paper, and we had two data structures, one for the highly successful, the other one for the less successful. Again, the reviewers came back and said, you can't do, that's not methodologically appropriate. So we had to have one career structure, one data structure which had the high career attainment and the low career attainment, and what are the unique differences has to be there in one table. So thanks to the reviewers and our friendly reviewers who actually helped us do that. But then that's how we had about, and each interview lasted they were long interviews. There were people who shared their stories in a very, very gripping manner. Because some of them, as I said, were lawyers and teachers and people, they were very highly successful people, and they had the art of storytelling, and they actually narrated, and sometimes we just lent our ears to them, we kept on listening to them. Right. So then we followed the recommendations of Joy et al. From raw data to theorization. This is where you actually get down to the model, and we coded each transcript, and individually we did it so, and brought in a third person to see whether there is enough independence or there is any researcher's bias there. Right. So this is where what our says, we labeled the first as who were successful and tried to achieve a balance in their career ecosystem, who forced meaningful employment while experiencing career satisfaction and success across time, which suggests their careers were sustainable. So when you look at the low career attainment group, it was very, very different. It was very, very different. So the defining characteristic for the first group, it was the highly successful group, was for example, non-acceptance or rejection. I'll give you some examples. See, there was this candidate who secured admission to IIT Delhi for the BTech program. So the administration denied offering it. They said we have no policy of admitting a black. Now, of course, things have changed. This candidate went to the court and actually got an order in favor of the candidate. He chose not to join. He went to Stanford. He's a big researcher working for Uber there. So this is where be it great students or great employee talent, when we say no to this kind of population, we lose heavily. But these are also people who are not going to sit tight if you deny something. So non-acceptance or rejection is something which comes to them, and they are the ones, they are not saying, look, this is what is going to happen to me, I'm going to take it. They're saying, no, I'm going to be the master of my circumstance, I'm going to create it for myself. So therefore, the sense of personal agency is something which is so supreme for them. So supreme. As when you compare them, unfortunately, when you compare them with the low career attainment folks, fait accompli. The belief that, is because of something that we did in the past is something that we need to suffer now. And they had to meekly submit to rejections, and they themselves became victim of the circumstance. So, I mean, these were some of the main, the non-acceptance or rejection, relatability, family support, enabling self through technology, and trying to influence mindset change, where the defining characteristics of the highly successful visually impaired individuals. So in brief, I described what is non-acceptance rejection. Relatability I also described. So when you talk about family support, it's not necessarily the financial resource or the material resources. It's the investment of time, the way that you are actually, for example, I mean, there was this family, this chap works for IBM as a programmer. He went on to join Harvard Business School. Right, he had a sighted brother, elder brother. He tells me in the interview that the way that my brother was brought up, I was brought up in the same. Even if I didn't have eyesight, I did not have any specific concessions or accommodations from my family. So therefore, the message is, if you want a person a child with a disability, and specifically a visually impaired child, don't make the child diffident. Don't make the child diffident. Right? So this is the kind of family support that these individuals have spoken about, which actually boosted their confidence, and they went on to actually roll on to the world. Enabling a self through technology. Some of these people were not rich enough, but because, I'm not a brand ambassador for Apple or any of these brands, but they sell very expensive phones. They use some NGO or something else to sponsor for buying these gadgets, so that they can use the technology to do what which is otherwise not possible with the use of these kinds of gadgets, right? So this is where they have displayed a very high degree of personal agency and could galvanize support from different stakeholders. For example, getting admissions into college, they had to go fight to court. Getting employment, they have to go to the court. So getting even accepted your voice, heard your voice as a family member, you need to fight with your family. You're walking along as a visually impaired individual, walking with a family member to a store, and you ask the shopkeeper about something. He doesn't respond to you. He tells to the someone who is there. He thinks because you're blind, you can't even hear. So this is the kind of discrimination which you go through, and unfortunately, the low career attainment people, they are the ones who face this, and because they accept the fact that it's something which is fate for them, and they're very utterly highly suspicious. They think that all the time the sighted people are conniving against them. And unfortunately, this is the India story. The moment, because there are reservations in India, and given the percentage of people who are blind, which is so less, even among the disabled category, they would find a government job. The family clings on to the person, and they expect the blind individual to support the family. See, this is how the tables turn. In the case of the highly successful participants, there is family support. What best you require, we are here to support. Here, in the case of the low career attainment participants, they're saying, you need to support us because you have free concessions from the government. But if you look at the way there is two groups would pursue in terms of taking concessions or accommodations, the highly successful group will say no for any accommodations, any reservations. They don't want we to be parked in somewhere and get free salaries from the government. We have to contribute, and we want to make our pay with dignity. But when it comes to the low career attempt, slowly successful, they are that all the time they're looking for a scribe who can write an exam, pay X amount of money, pass an exam, obtain a job, and relax for life. So now, going back to what are the contributions that we're making to these theories? Because we thought that we are trying to integrate the concept of career success, how we contribute to sustainable careers and the careers ecosystems in large. So let's first talk about what we did to the career ecosystems theory. We have demonstrated that the nature and quality of interactions and transactions among the different actors determines the viability and the strength of an ecosystem, as demonstrated by a high career attainment participants. So this is important because the nature of interactions, the way that you're cocky, you're not going to accept a rejection just because you're blind. It makes so much of a difference. You need to engage into a conversation. If need be, go take them, pull them to the court of law. So, and you might go through certain hardships, but for the rest of the people who are going to come after you, it's going to be so much smooth for them. For ecosystems to be sustainable, organization society should utilize this talent, and this is where we manifested the interrelatedness of the individual agency and the interactions with other constituents in their careers, like the employers, the families, and other institutions. Interestingly, the real barriers which the successful participants have narrated are actually the ones who are the institutions, the schools, the banks, the colleges, and all of them. Second, how do you contribute to the career sustainability literature? We have identified the eco-social processes which help them to transcend the different kinds of boundaries. And when we compare our low and high career attainment participants, this is where the difference is. And the ones who are highly successful, and for VIs and PW need to be highly resilient alongside strong performance. That may not be the case for ableist individuals, thereby extending sustainable careers theory. But what it says is that, the moment that you are a person with a disability, the responsibility rests on you, so that you have to have that kind of psychological contract and keep on performing for you to be sustainable. This may not be the case for ableist individuals. The role of acceptance is also something which is very strongly highlighted through this research, and we have extended literature on acceptance of PWs and by the cohorts in the workplace, and this is the first starting point for them to be successful. Fourth, the role of the family in building resilience and shaping career aspirations through constant mentoring, and especially during the formative years, is so very important. And we expand career theory by revealing the high career participants held individualistic career attitudes, not necessarily boundaryless. And the traditional career paths were the best for them. They have to have successful and sustainable careers. And these are some of the implications for practice. And organizations need to have inclusive culture and a conducive environment. And individuals who try to achieve success, they have to acquire education and training, and they need to reach out to the institutions which are there, which can offer support, and they have to network with highly successful visually impaired individuals and show resilience. This is something where, we just got really, I was moved by the kind of quotes with this. These are the direct quotes from the respondents. We may not have eyesight, but vision should not be lost. Right? And the second was by a chief disability commissioner, himself a blind individual, very senior government official. It's outrageously erroneous and absolutely ridiculous to equate one's disability with one's inability. VIs have the inherent potential of being agents of active change rather than passive recipients of benefits. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry if I overshot the time. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Wow, Professor Uday, thank you so much for sharing all these insights from your research. I will ask the audience for questions and comments just now. I can see there's lots of applause coming your way.
Thank you.
Professor Sushanta, I see you're on mute. Did you want to come in?
No, I have no comments. I appreciate his work.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Uday, it's an excellent study. I think in your respondents, could you find any civil servant? Because I see that a lot of respondents are there in different walks of life.
Yes.
But in recent past, you would see that quite a few of visually impaired people have joined civil service also.
Yes. In fact, one of our participants, Dr. Mittal, was a visually impaired
Maybe
individual.
next time, as an extension of your study, you could do something on them.
Yeah.
And second thing is that some of the universities, yeah.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Sorry.
Okay, Uday, you were saying something?
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah, second thing I was asking, say for example, some of the universities actively encourage people who are visually impaired to get admission. Say for example, I can give one example, my own alma mater, that is JNU. JNU had some of the students, and they in fact did so well. One of our students, our batchmates, topped the CPS, Center for Political Studies. He was the number one, first class pass. I mean, he was the topper. So have you taken some kind of a view of the organizations who have employed such people? Of course, you have given one quote, which is obviously given by somebody who has employed a visually impaired person. But I think maybe more systematic such kind of studies can be done on, or you would have done probably, I'm not sure. What is the feedback of the organizations who have employed them, and what is their viewpoint in terms of their capability, potential, and output?
Well, I'll not respond something that I haven't done. I'll be honest. I've only spoken to my participants were employees or fighting against the employer. So there is already work. I have not done the work, so I'll be honest. But Mukta and a team, there's so much of work. They have also taken the perspective of the employer, what it means to hire or employ a person with a disability. It's already. No. So I mean, slowly, the better part is, because of different kinds of goals and the sustainable goals that you have. For example, lemon tree hotels. They have a policy, and they said that 40% of our employee population has to be. They call it ODI. This is something opportunity deprived individuals, ODIs. So when you check into a lemon tree hotel, maybe the guy steward who's coming to may not be able to speak. See, he will use only sign language, but he makes such an impact that the next time when you're going to book a hotel there, possibly hit that hotel. So there is a message which is actually strongly coming, and there is the change is there, but the change is slow. So if you want to actually make it mandatory through some kind of, it can be done through affirmative action, but some kind of, for example, reservation is there for only government jobs in the government sector, which is again 2% of it. So, yeah. And you know how the bureaucrats very skillfully can say that we did not find any person suitable and keep those jobs vacant and not fill them. So that's where when these PSC will go to some of these IIMs, and no matter they might get the bottom of the class, they'll hire it because they have to fill in the jobs. Right, but there is change, certainly, I would say, but I haven't spoken to those employers. I haven't taken that, so I'm sorry. I will keep in mind and taking a note of it. I'll talk to and do that.
No, without that also your study is wonderful. It gives a lot of insights.
Thank you so very kind of you.
Have you got plans for taking this line of research forward, Uday?
Yeah, I think I'm looking at, which is in fact, okay, that's a good question, because I'm doing one with Beatrice, which is on career sustainability and what it means from the lens of first-year graduates. This is a qualitative investigation, and we have the protocol ready. And once the kids are back on campus from the second year, from the summer internships, we are going to commence the study. That's one. There's one which I'm doing with Josh Ackermans, and this is on career shocks with Mishra. And this is a 3-wave study with a gap of with a lag of 9 months between waves. This we started during the COVID, in the midst of the first and the second wave of COVID. So it's still going on. We are at the third phase of the data collection, and there is some interesting, but as you know, because unfortunately what has happened, some of the respondents who responded in the first and the second wave, they passed away, and the respondents, because they passed away because of COVID. It's so sad and unfortunate. And there is a drop in the participant response rate also, but we're struggling. We are trying to get some good numbers so that we can make some meaningful. The other one which I did with a student is about occupations of professionals employed in a specific, for example, salespeople. It's such an important profession. And every organization today is alive, probably survives because salespeople get revenues for us. So they talk all the time about salesperson's effectiveness, but not their career success or career sustainability. And what my good friend has taken, how, for a salesperson to also succeed, you also need the support of the spouse. Because you may have a monstrous boss in office, but then when you go back home, I'm being very gender neutral. I'm not saying your wife is going to support. I'm being very, very gender neutral. You need to have a supporting spouse or a supporting wife, husband or a supporting wife to actually let you work. And the amount of stress that you go through, the emotional exhaustion that you experience, there should be some kind of moderation the moment you reach home. So we got some interesting findings through that study that we are going to present in the upcoming thing. And yeah, but to Belgin to respond to this thing on using visually impaired or PWs, I'm looking at what could be more interesting, because as Murray Davis said, research is only valuable if it's interesting.
That's fascinating, and I suppose it would also make sense to look at dual earner couples in all of these research as well. Where how does support work, and when both of the spouses need the support as well. I'm conscious we're coming to the end of our allocated time. If I may, I'll try to pull up some key themes that I have been observing myself from across the four wonderful presentations that we had today, and then I'll invite the room to contribute in terms of the challenges of both careers in India and doing careers research in India. My observations were, I think, across the four papers, and especially with our strong start from Nimmi's focus on personal resources, I think we see across the four papers the importance of empowering the individual to drive their career forward. But also what we see is this role of social inclusion in how we should, through institutions, whether that's the social institution of family, that's the social institution of your government, or the institution context of higher education or education in general, is to help empower individuals and the intervening role these institutions have in empowering individuals. And I suppose from across the studies, we have seen that the key issue is of discussion for us as careers researchers is social inclusion, whether that's based on your demographics or disabilities or illnesses, etc. But the role of social inclusion seems to be a key theme, and I'm using some of the keywords from across the talks actually. So this multi-stakeholder approach seems to be very relevant. So we bring in the spouses, we bring in the institutions, we bring in the employers, and as researchers, I suppose that gives us a fascinating logistical nightmare, an empirical conundrum to go through. But I will ask the room to comment on where they see careers research going, what the challenges, opportunities you think are, because clearly you are experts.
I think it's no, I mean, I would like to go first if that's okay. I think it's no surprise that three of our works that was presented, at least, were sort of qualitative works. I think one of the things is that whenever we think about clearly trying to highlight a context, I think there is just so many dimensions to it that I think typically a quantitative paper would take only 3 or 4, 5 variables. And that just does not seem to do justice at some level to the contextual nuances. So at some level, of course, I think some theory extension and some testing can be done, of course, and it has a lot of value. But I think if we are looking at, and this was the space, I think in this space, we have careers in the world, India. I mean, when you're talking about this India webinar in that sense, I feel that there is greater, whenever we try to go a bit in depth into the context, it sort of requires us to sort of take a qualitative design to some extent. And I think that's one of the threads that I sort of saw. The other idea is this entire precarity idea. I think most of us, most of the workforce in India is precarious. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's like over this thing, but be it because of their gender, be it because of their disability, or be it because of whatever. Many of them are in the informal sector and so on and so forth. if you just look at most career choices, I mean, most theories, I think most Western theories would tend to assume that, your vocational choices are a manifestation or an expression of your identity or yourself or something of that sort. I think career choices in India are highly pragmatic. People are extreme. I mean, there are 4 or 5 things which assure you a good lifestyle. And we are more or less just choosing between them. I mean, we are probably doing a process of elimination, saying that this, I just can't do. So let me do this and this. So I think this inherent pragmatism, precarity, which we are often forced to do, I think, and even ourselves or even our participants, I think is a major deviation compared to some of the other research that I see, where people are just doing things out of their interest and things like that. And I think most of India might not. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I'm being too pessimistic or something of that sort, but I think that these two, one is the precarity of the system, as well as the cultural nuance, the distance compared to the other contexts. I think these are 2 key things that I felt. Thanks.
That's fascinating, because I think in the more Western parts of the world, precarity is only now becoming a topic of discussion, whereas in Indian context, it has always been a topic of discussion, isn't it? As you see, this idea of individual making a career choice, I think we go back to what Uday was saying, that careers may be best defined as bounded rather than boundaryless in that sense, isn't it? Any other comments from our contributors or the audience? Or final notes that we maybe haven't covered today?
So Belgin, thank you very much for organizing this workshop. At least there is an opportunity to discuss some points. So just by sharing what we are and listening to others is a great way to learn. I mean, thank you very much to you and Surinder for running this beautiful event. Thank you very much.
Well,
Thank
thank you. Sorry, Nimmi.
Sorry, no, just saying thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Belgin. Thank you, Surinder. And to my
Thank you all. Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
It has been an honor having all of you in this session, and I've put in the chat the link for Careers Division LinkedIn page. If you aren't aware, please do consider joining. And if you are attending the Boston meeting, let's make an effort to perhaps get together and talk more about careers research in India as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you, Surendra.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.